by which I mean books I've had for a super duper long time and I just haven't read, not books that were written 50 years ago. But you probably already figured that out. So I should read this, not to steal from it, but you know what I mean, like to get in the headspace. I was supporting my local store because I didn't want it to go out of business because it was new here and it hasn't gone out of business yet. Why do I look like I have a neck brace on? Hi everyone, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be a look at some of the books that have been sitting on my bookshelf collecting dust for the longest time. And there was some stiff competition for this, but these are all books that I've had since before life at BookTube. Some of them since before I moved into this apartment. But I was doing a little like shelf reorganizing. If you've been following along with me, you know I have acquired some new books over the past 6 or so weeks, and I was trying to find a home for them, which meant readjusting and taking a look at things. So I did pull off a couple books that I am going to unhaul, but I was kind of wait till I had enough to make like a video out of it. And in the process, I came across a bunch of books that I haven't read, haven't attempted to read, but don't quite want to get rid of yet. But I kind of want to make a deal with myself. Ugh, my nose itches. Similar to what I did last year. At the end of last year, I picked 13 books that I plan to reread in 2019 because they were books that I loved or cherished or had some sort of fond memory of and had kept them on my bookshelf even though I hadn't read most of them in years. So I read, I want to say 6 of the 13. I kind of lost momentum like in the summer and never got back on track with them, but I do still plan to finish that project. It's just gonna roll into next year instead. And then sort of in that vein, I would like to pull these books forward and I think maybe give myself 6 months to say either like you read it and then you decide if you like it or not, if you want to keep it or if you want to go or it's going to go. Or if you don't even come close to picking it up or have no interest in it or don't even do like a try a chapter thing, you need to unhaul it by like June of 2020, because it's one thing to hold on to books that are sentimental or that I love or, you know, that I plan to get to, whether it's a collection by an author or, I don't know, a reason, think of all the reasons in the world why I would like buy a book, not read it and keep it. But these are just sort of, for the most part, pretty random with the exception of one. So I thought let's be accountable and put this out there and then also see if you guys have read any of these and if you had any input or advice or thoughts or reviews of your own that I could take and decide what to do from there. So let's, yeah, fidgeting. Let's just get into the pile of random books. So the first book, which I've had for a very, very, very long time, is The Good Thief's Guide to Paris by Chris Ewan, I think is how you say his name. So sorry, we're operating with fake lighting in the background to make it not look like I'm filming at night, which I am. And this is it's a series. I don't know if I would say it's a trilogy. So I read the first book, which was The Good Thief's Guide to Amsterdam, and then I have the third book in the series, The Good Thief's Guide to Las Vegas. I don't know if he wrote anything after that because I never read this book, but for some reason I bought all 3 of them. And I enjoyed Good Thief's Guide to Amsterdam. I'm not even gonna lie, I probably read that book 8 years ago. When did this come out? I had taken a trip. I won't bore you guys with all the details, but basically I was in the Netherlands, I was in Belgium, we went to Germany, and then I had my first trip to Paris in November of 2009, actually. Holy crap, it's 10 years ago that that happened. And when I got back from that trip, I was inspired and swooning and all sorts of other things for Europe and for that time in my life. But yeah, this came out in 2008. So I enjoyed Good Thief's Guide to Amsterdam. I never wound up picking this one up. I found that it was like slow, kind of a burn. And this is kind of, so Charlie Howard is a globe-trotting mystery writer, professional thief, and poor decision maker. And he's in Paris. So he's a thief, as you know. and it's kind of like a little Cary Grant-esque type of thing. Sort of that, you know, burglar that he is, which reminds me of how Remington Steele Pierce Brosnan was in that show, was sort of that To Catch a Thief kind of suave, debonair man who is also a thief and a burglar. So I liked it. I didn't love it. I also feel like it's worth giving a try again, and I'm at a different place in my life and a different place in my reading that maybe I'll appreciate it in a way that I didn't back then. I don't know. So this is one of the books that I have. I also have The Guide to Vegas buried back here someplace. So obviously if I don't get on with this, that one's going with it, but I want to read them in order, so I'm going to read this one first, theoretically. The next book I have is called When the Music's Over, and this is by Peter Robinson, and it's an Inspector Banks novel, which means it's part of a series. Now, ooh, geez. I distinctly remember buying this at Barnes & Noble, my Barnes & Noble, which means, did that just open last year? I haven't had this one forever, so there, I just lied to you guys. I feel like maybe I did buy this after BookTube, or maybe right before BookTube happened. But it's got great reviews. Stephen King plugs it, Louise Penny plugs it. It's a series, so I don't know how important that is. Like, I don't know why I would buy one in a series, and I don't know if these are all the series, but like, can you, the light's gonna mess that up completely. There we go. Look at all the books he wrote. So hopefully it's not, these aren't all part of the series, because I'm never gonna catch up to it. But this says, with Detective Inspector Annie Cabot investigating a young woman's death, newly promoted Detective Superintendent Banks finds himself taking on the coldest of cases, a 50-year-old assault allegedly perpetrated by beloved celebrity Danny Caxton. Now Caxton stands accused at the center of a media storm, and it's Banks' job to discover the shocking truth. As more women step forward with accounts of Caxton's manipulation, that is a tough name, Banks must piece together decades-old evidence while the investigation leads him down the darkest of paths. Suspenseful, powerful, and surprising, When the Music's Over is the finest novel to date from one of the foremost suspense writers at work today. I've thought about unhauling this multiple times, but I just haven't. So, has anybody heard of this author, these books, or any of it? I'm disappointed it's a chunker because that's part of what's putting me off from it, but I've got this one to debate. The next book is one that I do think I have brought up on this channel before, and it's The Flight Attendant by Chris Bahalian? Not quite sure. This came out a little while ago. I bought the hardcover like when it first came out. Don't ask me why. But this was, I know why. Because it's a thriller and it's an unreliable narrator. And this came out circa 2018. So this is a woman who's a flight attendant, and I believe she wakes up one morning and there's like a dead guy in her bed. And she's on a trip and she's got to get back on the plane and do her job and fly back to wherever they were. But she drinks a ton. So we get into our like girl on a train kind of vibe of things. Like, can we believe her? Can we believe anything she says? She's afraid to call the police, obviously, because she doesn't know if she's the one who did it because she's a blackout drunk. She lies to the FBI. Is it too late to come clean? Could she have killed him? If not, who did? So it says, set amid the captivating world of those whose lives unfold at 40,000 feet, the flight attendant unveils a spellbinding story of memory, of reckless self-disregard, and of murder far from home. So I also remember hearing that Jessica Biel, I think, bought rights to this to make, I don't know if it's going to be like a movie, or if it's going to be like The Sinner, where it's like a multi-part show that's going to wind up on like a Netflix, Amazon-ish type of venue. But I'm intrigued by it. I mean, it's got all the things that I like in a book. I don't know what I'm waiting for, but I haven't picked it up. Another hardcover that I bought based on absolutely nothing is Dead Letters by Kate Dolan Leach. And this is about two sisters. And I believe one of the sisters is supposed to be dead, but maybe she's not. So Ava runs away. Family has a vineyard. Ooh. I should read this because I do have a vineyard bit to the book I'm writing. So I should read this. Not to steal from it, but you know what I mean, like to get in the headspace. I feel like I haven't read a book that was in a vineyard. I was feeling so smart based on my trip to Napa and Sonoma. But anyway, so Ava runs away. 2 years later, she must return to upstate New York because her twin sister Zelda is dead. So a family of alcoholics. We seem to be on the unreliable narrator kick once again. They are twins. Zelda was allegedly burned alive. Ava finds the official explanation a little bit too neat. So there's definitely some sort of questions of what's going on here. I feel like this was more family saga than mystery thriller is kind of what I wound up hearing about it. And again, it's not like hugely big, but it's just like a little bit too big for me to it's 332 pages, that's not big. But I just haven't been compelled to pick it up at all. And I don't know why I bought it in the first place, having not known anything about it, but I did because I'm a sucker for things like that. So let me know if anybody's read this one. It's got plugs on the back from Wendy Walker, from Carolyn Kepnes, on top of like Kirkus Reviews, Library Journal. Beautifully written novel, push and pull tension, well crafted. This is her debut novel. Entwines the clever mystery of Agatha Christie, the wit of Dorothy Parker, and the inebriated gothic of Eugene O'Neill. See, when I read these things, this is why I picked it up off the shelf of Barnes & Noble. So I remember buying this one too. And this was like, I was supporting my local store because I didn't want it to go out of business because it was new here and it hasn't gone out of business yet. Another blind purchase by an author I've never heard of before in hardback is Two Girls Down. And this is by Louisa Luna. I feel like these all were purchased around the same time during like a stress buy. My old job used to drive me to the brink. And I used to stress shop like nobody's business. So I'm pretty sure that's when this happened. But this is another thriller, shocker. So this is two girls, a mother's worst nightmare. Her two young daughters, Kylie and Bailey, disappear without a trace from a strip mall parking lot in their hometown of Denville, Pennsylvania. So the family hires this bounty hunter, Alice Vega, for reasons that are not important for the sake of summarizing the book. She partners with a former cop, Max Kaplan, to help her navigate the local scene. She'll go to any length to follow the slippery trail of the missing girls, no matter where it leads, and to bring them home before they're lost forever. So it sounds interesting. Lee Child plugged the front of this book, and I know a plug from another author doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I'm a sucker for that stuff, obviously. I don't know. I just haven't been compelled to pick it up, and I feel like I heard somewhere like a so-so review, but I mean, these are all hardcover books that I've spent good money on, but they also take up a lot of real estate. So here's another one I haven't been compelled to pick up. So let me know if you guys have read this one too, because I don't know, I haven't heard anything really much about this author either, which isn't to say anything good, bad, or otherwise. She's written a few other books, but here's one. The next book I also bought when it first came out. This came out in 2013, so 6 years ago. Took me a minute. And that's Sycamore Row by John Grisham. And this is the sequel, the long-awaited sequel to A Time to Kill, his first book, which I loved to bits. A very hard read in a lot of ways, but an incredible story, I thought. Just, I would say it remains like my favorite John Grisham book. It's the second of his books I read. I did read The Firm first, not long after it came out, and then went back and read Time to Kill. And this book, even though it just came out 6 years ago, takes place 3 years after A Time to Kill, and it revisits Jake Brigance, who is one of my favorite fictional characters / Matthew McConaughey's portrayal is one of my favorite McConaughey movies. And Jake is in another super controversial case. They are still down in Clanton. And for this one, there is Seth Hubbard is a wealthy man dying of lung cancer. He trusts no one. He hangs himself from a sycamore tree, and he winds up leaving a new handwritten will, and it sort of brings together all sorts of questions and all sorts of issues with his kids and his family, and he winds up leaving all his money to his maid. And it says it brings Jake into a conflict as riveting and dramatic as the murder trial that made him one of Ford County's most notorious citizens. So more questions than answers are raised. Again, it's racial tensions, it's confrontation. It's really gonna, it sounds like, bring the town against each other and really divisive in that way. So I am a fan of Grisham. I haven't read any of his more recent books. I did reread The Client this year as part of my reread, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm curious if this will feel more like his older books. Geez, he's written so many. I'm just looking at this. I would say I probably stopped reading after The Street Lawyer or The Testament. So I probably read like his first 10 books. And then I just got off the path with him. And I felt like his books just stopped appealing to me. And I went through a big like legal thriller kick for years and years and years. And so I feel like I kind of got off him when I was getting off Patricia Cornwell and kind of those books. And I just was like not syncing with them as well. But I bought this when it first came out because I needed to know what was going to happen. And 6 years later, I clearly didn't need to know that much. But let me know if anybody has read this book because I'm curious, and I still would like to get to it because I like revisiting these characters, and I'm curious, like I said, if it's gonna feel like old school Grisham rather than some of his newer books, since we're revisiting characters from back in the day. And then the last book that I feel like a pile of garbage for not having read is The Break by Marian Keyes. And I have talked about her a whole bunch on this channel. I adore her as a writer. This book came out in 2017, I think, and I had to have it. Yeah, 2017. This is the UK edition of it. It was like the first UK book that I bought. I'm sorry, the lighting is really reflecting on the white. And I haven't read it, and it's so big, like so many of her books are. 569 is the last page of this book. I was going to reread Lucy Sullivan is Getting Married, which is the first Marian Keyes book I ever read, and that was on my reread list for this year, and I didn't get to it, but I'm going to, I promise. But maybe I'll read this one first, and I feel like part of why I was putting this off was like thinking I was going to read that other book, and it's so stupid, like you can't read 2 books by the same author. I've certainly done that already this year. But this is Amy and Hugh it says, we're taking a break, a city with fancy food sort of break, if only. So Hugh isn't leaving her. He still loves her. He's just taking a break from their marriage, their children, and most of all from their life together. 6 months to lose himself in Southeast Asia, and there is nothing Amy can say or do about it. Yes, it's a midlife crisis, but let's be clear, a break isn't a break up yet. However, for Amy, it's enough to send her, along with her extended family of gossips, misfits, and troublemakers, teetering over the edge. For a lot can happen in 6 months. When Hugh returns, if he returns, will he be the same man she married, and will Amy be the same woman? Because if Hugh is on a break from their marriage, then so is she. And then it says, The Break is a story about the choices we make and how those choices help to make us. It is Marian Keyes at her funniest, wisest, and brilliant best. So I am such a fan of her writing because there is an element of, especially in the earlier books, where there was sort of this contemporary sort of chick lit relationship-y part to it, but it always went into something deeper and more complex, and not one of those sort of like surface fluff books that were kind of like all the rage at the time. And there's no ding on any of those because I loved those as well, but I feel like she was categorized with some of those books, but she deals with everything from depression and alcoholism and addiction. It's a huge theme in a lot of her books, and she herself is an alcoholic, dealt with a lot of mental health issues, was very transparent about it a long time ago, before a lot of other people were being transparent about it. And you can feel all the raw emotions in her books, and whether she's dealing with divorce or cheating or loss. There's some heavy content to a lot of her books, but there's also huge humor to it. Just a beautiful cast of characters to things that she writes. And I just, like I said, I feel like just like a pile of poo for not having picked up this book. So part of why I'm not picking it up right this moment is because it's heavy and I can't imagine trucking this on the train with me, but I need to figure out a way to read this. Taking a look at some of these books, I am interested in some of them. I'm not interested in some of the other ones, so I think this is going to be a pretty quick decision on what stays and what goes. But this is one that I definitely want to give a go to because she is someone who I felt when I was reading her books was someone as both a reader and a writer that I felt got me, and that I could see myself in the pages, and I could see my life reflected in a lot of her stories, and my feelings and my words reflected a lot on the page. So she is a writer that I have seen speak. I have met her before. She just, to me, is very inspirational, sort of on all fronts, be it as a writer and just as a woman. And I need to get back in her world. It's funny, I sit here holding this book and I realize how long it's been since I've read one of hers and how much I loved her. So I think it's time to get myself back in, and I'm gonna try to do it with this one. So those are the books I pulled off the shelf for this. It is not the all-inclusive list of everything I have, but it's definitely books that I haven't talked about on here before, and they are kind of, I think there's maybe a couple others, but these are the big ones. Like I have a couple nonfiction books I haven't read, not counting writing books, but we'll save that for another day. But let me know if you guys have read any of these books, if you have thoughts, recommendations, feelings about any of these books, or if there's, you know, some kind of old books on your shelf that you are kind of feeling like you want to get to, because like I said, I picked up a bunch of new books over the past month or so, and they need a place to live. And this handful of, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books here are certainly taking up some valuable space. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you, as always, for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.